people have asked me to make videos just me talking to the camera. I don't particularly want to do these often, but here we are. I've got some coffee. I've got a script, not really a script, some talking points. I know the audio is a bit clammy. I didn't want to unplug too many things from the podcast to get this set up with better audio, but I promise I will eventually. Quick Fluke Unbox update is that we're nearly done with the single store. It's very, very close to being complete. So that's also why I've been MIA and busy, and why I'm not going to reshuffle audio plugs and stuff just to make this video. But literally we're talking days, if not a week. We want to try and launch before ProQuest. It's not going to happen, more than likely not going to happen, although we'll probably launch before ProQuest, but you won't be able to buy your ProQuest cards from me just yet. Okay, so I want to talk about buyouts. I want to talk about this. I made a comment on Twitter, on my YouTube, a lot of controversial takes, in my opinion. So I'm going to correct some of them, or at least give my opinion or push back on them. And I'm not going to call specific names out, except there's three particular other content creators that decided to weigh in, and I am going to call them out because they did weigh in. And I'll explain why those three specifically at the end. But let's talk about buyouts. The term buyout is if you Google it, it's acquisition of a controlling interest in a company, and it's usually used synonymously with the term acquisition or hostile takeover. That's where the phrase originates from. It's usually when it's a publicly traded company, so you don't need to contact owners to buy shares in the company. It's not private. An entity or a group will buy up to 51%, and then or over 50%, and then they take over. Hostile takeovers are usually frowned upon. It's not illegal, obviously. You're allowed to do that. It's a publicly traded company. If you go dig through the history of hostile takeovers, a lot of them go pretty bad. A lot of them are very detrimental to the health of the company and its employees. But in general, that's where the phrase comes from. We're not talking about the stock market here anyway. Talk about, obviously, buyouts in the card world, in Flesh and Blood specifically. So this is, I want to be very clear who I'm not talking to, because a lot of people weighed in who actually no one's fucking talking to. I'm not talking to you if you're a collector that speculatively buys. Like, if you're a player, or you just collect the game and you're like, oh, I think this card will be good, I'm going to buy 10 of them. Not talking to you. Absolutely not talking to you. Do whatever you want. You're a player, you're a collector, you're an investor, I'm not talking to you. The buyouts, do whatever you want, is what I'm saying. None of this is directed at you. None of my comments, tweets were directed at you. I'm also definitely not talking to people buying multiple sets of cards for multiple decks. So some are buying 6 Command and Conquers because they want 2 decks and they want to pull cards out. I'm not talking to you either. Do whatever you want. I do the same. I don't care. I'm not talking to you. And I'm definitely not talking to people even who are aggressively buying out a TCG player when it comes to alpha boxes or the first edition boxes of the first 3 or 4 sets, like Monarch First Ed. I'm not talking to people who are buying out cards that have been reprinted to infinity, although it doesn't look like it, but like Tunic has 4 prints. I don't care if you're buying out cold foil Tunics. That's sort of irrelevant. Not the point where I'm making. So buying out cards that there are versions of that are unlimited and reprinted, and you're buying the rarest version and you're trying to buy as many as you can speculatively, definitely not talking to you either. These are the people I am talking to, or I was referring to, who I think are damaging the game or should stop what they're doing, because I had threatened to call people out. I'm talking about people or individuals that are hoarding 10 plus cases of sets like History Pack White Border, or any of the original unlimited sets. Again, this is a very soft one. Like 10 cases isn't a lot. I'm talking about people are just sitting on bulk of this speculatively, where it's supposed to be going to players and they're just hoping to cash in. That's scalping. It's not really buying out, but I am referring to you sometimes when I say stuff. I'm definitely talking to people spending more than the average yearly salary on TCG Player every month, purely to play the market. let's pretend the yearly average salary is about 50,000 US, about 80,000 AUD. If you're throwing that kind of money around on play pieces, on cards that you know you're only buying because you think players want, I'm definitely referring to you. I'm talking average yearly salary per month. Talking to you. Groups that are pooling money together, so because individually they can't afford a year's worth of salary per month or more, or they can all individually, but they're pooling to target one card. Talking to you for sure. Fuck you. And I'll get to why. And I'm specifically out of all this talking to people who, because let me explain this way. I don't really care to control any people I don't know, or are not public figures, or specifically don't pretend to love the game and the community, but in the background are doing things that are detrimental to the health of the game. So, if there's an individual that you know that's doing this, but like has no public persona, no public face, I don't care. There's not much you can do about that. Cannot help it if some millionaire in a country that doesn't even have flesh and blood is just dumping money into buying cards because they want to collect it. I don't care about that. I'm specifically talking to people that are vocally in support of the game and the community, and like to say that they're community leaders, and they give specifically some who even take support from LSS to make money, and then are using those funds or using that access or using their popularity in the scene behind the scenes to then spend more than a year's worth of salary per month buying out cards on TCG Player that they know players want to buy just so they can flip for money. I'm being very specific here. It's people that have a face, but they're like that on one side of that face, or they're two-faced. One side of it is their community leaders, and on the other side they are leveraging their position and money to buy stuff, and we'll get to specifics or why I think it's wrong, and why I would call people like this out. So let me make some comparisons. If you're a gamer, like a console gamer, PC gamer, you'll know what a Smurf account is. This sort of ties in a little bit to what buyouts in a game look like. And it's a long stretch, but you'll understand where my frustration comes from. Smurf account is when I'm a high-level player, but I jump onto a low-level account to dump on people, right? Let's say I'm diamond rank or platinum rank in Valorant or something like that. I'm a grandmaster in League of Legends, and I jump into Iron League just to shit on people, just to swing my dick around. Not illegal, can't stop it, but you know that that's not really... the word ethical is a weird one to use, but those type of people are so ego-driven by winning that they're willing to, again, hurt the game that they play, because you jump into Iron League and just dump on people. You might cause people to quit. You might cause people to not want to play the game. And you know that, and you do it anyway. Another example I like to use is... I used to play basketball. I'm 5'6", so this is a funny example. I stopped playing basketball in high school because I was very much too short and too stocky to play the game at a high level. Although I love playing it. That would be like me failing to play at a high school level basketball and then going down to the primary school and playing there and just dumping on kids. Like, not letting them play, stealing the ball, pushing them around. That's what this type of buyout to me is like, is you're spending more than most players make on average a year in the market to hurt the players so you can make money. And maybe you don't do it to hurt players, but you obviously know in the logic of buying out a play piece, like let's say surgical extraction, you know that buying that out will mean every Arachne main needs to spend more money than they otherwise would have, mainly to you because you own a large share of them. And the reason I'm comparing this to like children's sport is you can play this game on the share market. You can play it in crypto. You can even do it in Magic the Gathering, which has It's probably more than 1,000,000 times the size, economy-wise, of Flesh and Blood. But you're choosing to do it in a small 3-year-old economy game, I would imagine because you would fail at doing it in other markets, or you see this as easy pickings. And that's why I'm comparing it to Smurf accounts and ganging up on children in children's sport, is because I don't think you're capable of winning or playing the game at the high level that you think you are. And so you do it in Flesh and Blood because it's a growing players market that is very, very easy to throw money around. Throwing around $100,000 a month in Magic does nothing. You won't even buy 0.1% of a card. But in Flesh and Blood, the market is much, much smaller, and you know that. You know that throwing $100,000 towards a card in TCG Player for Flesh and Blood will actually... You might even own 50% of all the cards that were listed on TCG Player for that amount. That's why it's fucked, and I don't like it. As someone with some money, I already am aware... I've been approached to do this kind of thing. It's like, let's buy out this. I'm like, well, but people want to play with that. Let's leave that alone. I'm willing to hoard alpha boxes if that's like a speculative investment someone wants to make with me. But buying out surgical extractions, buying out razor reflexes, buying out this rounds on me, that's different. You're specifically going after cards that people need to play or want in their deck. It's at a low level and it's cheap. And it's more a sign of you not having money enough to play this in the big league, so you want to be a big fish in a small pond. And again, I don't care if you are a big fish in a small pond. I very much care that you're a big fish in a small pond that also says you love the game and want to support the game, yet you artificially inflate prices or artificially make things scarce to make money. Instead of doing the ethical way or the right way, if you really want to help the game, which is to stick to the collectible pieces. This is what I have a problem with. By the way, these are not the names of people doing buyouts. It's just people that made comments about this that I strongly disagree with, so I'm going to call them out or have this conversation. I know it's a bit one-sided, but I'm sure I'll hear from them. They all use the same word, which is why I'm picking on them. They all use the word capitalism, which is a very American defense and wrong. Paranine, Bronson, and Chris Sires all use the word capitalism to defend this kind of behavior. What struck me as odd is that all three of them are people with jobs. All three of them trade time for money, which in a capitalism system, you're basically on the bottom rung of the ladder. I'm not saying you have no money. I'm saying you have a master. It's modern day slavery. That's the lowest tier of money earning, is trading time for money. So you're using capitalism as a defense when you're not even like... I'm trying to say this without really pissing people off, even though I'm sure I already have. Capitalism is not an excuse. Hostile takeovers are illegal but frowned upon. And people get sued all the time for that stuff, because it can be through, like, for instance, you can do a hostile takeover, but if the people doing the hostile takeover also will result in a monopoly, they can get sued and stopped. It is illegal. And if you're defending this kind of behavior where, let's pick a specific example, like Red Razor Reflex is a generic attack reaction warriors use, ninjas use, pretty much every deck can use, and you're buying that specifically because you know players will have to buy it, but instead of them buying it for $1, which the market decided it's worth $1, you go and throw $100,000 into Razor Reflex and you buy them all to try and turn it into $200,000, and now people have to spend $2 to $5 to buy it back off you. There's always a bigger fish. There's always... I mean, in this case, I probably have money than all three of you put together. So if that's what you're recommending, like, pick a card that you like and let me throw some money around and see how it feels to not be able to buy cards for your specific hero. It's a bullshit excuse. Capitalism is fine. Capitalism is not some free fucking dog eat dog, which is another dumb fucking example. Dog eat dog. I'm literally talking about a fucking T-Rex eating dogs. I don't care about dog eat dog if they're the same size. Go nuts. If everyone's playing with the same amount of money, go nuts. If you're doing it within reason and you're not trying to... How do I... Okay, let's rationalize this. I'm talking about, let's say, Flesh and Blood. The entire Flesh and Blood TCG economy is $10 million a month. If you spend $1 million, you're spending too much. You're literally... This is why crypto coins are usually considered a scam. Is they'll fucking start one, and then the owner of the coin or the founder of the coin is holding like 50% of all the coins. If they decide to sell, everyone lose money. If they... Well, but that's all it actually matters is there's just one person with way too much power, and it can result in an effect for everyone. And that's what is happening with Flesh and Blood, is the economy is too small for the amounts of money that people are spending. And that's why they're spending it. Do you get what I'm saying? The people that are doing the buyouts are only doing it in Flesh and Blood because they can afford to make a big impact on the game. There's a group of you, and I know who you are, doing this. You're pooling money. You're at least not competing with each other, which in and of itself is still a dodgy fucking thing to do. But you're spending more money than most people in the economy can ever account for. Like you're throwing money around, affecting the game. Like I said, I don't care if you're just a spec buyer. I don't care if you're buying alpha product. I don't care if you are a private individual just doing this. You have no public persona, no face. You're just whatever. You're playing the market. I don't care. Like, I can't do anything about that. I specifically care about if you are also in publicly saying you're a supporter of the game. Everything you do is supposedly in the best interest of the game. Yet you definitely are doing things that are in service to your back pocket and not in service to growing the game. Do you have to grow the game? No. But should you be saying you are trying to grow the game and support it while you're pocketing money from this kind of behavior? No, fuck you. That's all I'm trying to say. Even my local group are like, yeah, but this has happened forever. It's happened. Everyone always does. It's like, no. I'm not talking about you buying 20 of a card and sitting on them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people out there with 5,000 card boxes full of one card that players desperately need, and the price is rising high because they're sitting on them, and they're doing that in spite of the effect of it on the game. I know it's a bit of a ramble, but that's hopefully explains where I'm coming from. Please stop defending it, especially if you have no money, or especially if you have never partaken in this kind of thing. You're just talking philosophically. Capitalism, it's free market, it's fine. It's not that simple. If the amount of money being spent by like one individual has it like an instant effect on the market. The share market is in the trillions. It's very different. There's not many people on their own individually that can affect the share market, right? With just their private wealth. And those that do, they get slammed when they do it. They get taken to court. They get sued. Like, Elon Musk has been literally kicked out of his own company, or kicked out as chairman of his own company for affecting the share market whatsoever. And in a game where the pricing of cards is very specifically tied to the meta and players buying cards, not collectors buying cards, it is not a fair game. The average player can barely afford their deck, like just their deck. They might want to foil it out as a luxury, while you spending 6-7 figures on cards that no individual needs for themselves, trying to play the stock market, inverted commas, trying to play the market and make money, while pretending to love the game and the community, while taking support from LSS, and then defending it because it's capitalism, is insane to me. And I will call you out. Can I do anything about it? No. Will I call it out and maybe make you lose support from the community? You better fucking believe I would, because you're not looking after the community. I don't care if you give away cards, and I don't care about all that shit, because the second you buy out a staple piece that people want purely to make money, it has nothing to do with growing the game. You're not giving these cards away. You're hoarding them and then trickling them back into the market. You'll see below in the comments, 99% of people will agree that you're fucked. You shouldn't be doing that. Go play that game with adults. Go play that game in a non-game environment like the share market, where it's companies and commodities and foreign exchange. You can do all that stuff. It's like adults doing it, and it's purely attrition, and it's purely if you're smart, you win, and if you get unlucky, you don't. But coming into a game with a 16 plus rating that is just went through COVID, is succeeding, but still needs our support, and you're just putting pressure on it to make some quick money, it's people like you that actually will end up being the downfall of the game. If there's too many people like you and not enough people like me who keep my fucking money away from the game, and I don't try and make money inside that economy. Like, I'm starting a single store, sure. Am I going out of my way to buy out like 100% of the cards available to me on TCG Player so that everyone has to come to me for it? No, that's extremely unethical. That's not a free market. That's not letting the economy decide what things are worth. That's me trying to decide what things are worth. It's a god complex bullshit. It's I don't have the kind of money some people have, but there are definitely people that can buy Flesh and Blood full stop. Like there are people in the world that could literally go on TCG Play and buy every single Flesh and Blood card on there. So in like a wild alternate universe, if someone does that, the game just dies, right? Like, if that's what they do, and then they want to feed us back the cards at 10 times the rate because they can. So that's what the extreme of that looks like. Is one individual throws $100 million at it, and boom, they own Flesh and Blood. They own every card that was available for sale. Now, of course, some private collectors can jump on and put their stuff up for sale, but let's assume 50% of all cards sold for Flesh and Blood are on TCG Player. Then if he doubles the price, you're going to be paying more. That's just how the market will work. Is there won't be enough supply for the demand, and so you'll have to deal with that individual, and you will have to pay more. This is happening on a smaller scale, but some of these wallets being thrown around, some of the money is being thrown around, is not as small as you think, and it's being done in a it's a lot of money for a small pond. It's a very small pond. Which is why it shouldn't be happening. Hopefully that point's coming across. I'm not trying to attack people individually. Like, that's why I'm not naming names of people I actually know are doing this. It's very specifically a point I'm trying to get across is this shouldn't be happening and why it shouldn't be happening. Anyway, argue with me below. That's my rant. I know I go all over the place when I think, but my brain's a little bit quicker than my mouth. Thanks for watching.